This is a reading from the End Times as revealed to Maria Valtorta. 50. The Church of Rome during the short period of peace. Right after the date Valtorta penciled in, unofficially as it were, Isaiah chapter 2, verses 2 to 4. November the 11th, 1943. Complete dictation. Quaderni 43, pages 545 to 547. Jesus says, "Let us gaze together at the times which, like a peaceful dawn after a stormy night, will come before the day of the Lord. You, Maria, will no longer be there, but from your resting place you will delight in it, because you will see mankind's struggle about to end, and sorrow already diminishing to give time to the living to gain new strength for earth's last short upheaval, before hearing the order that gathers it up in all its living and in all its dead from Adam's time onwards. I already told you, my church will have its Hosanna day before its last passion. Then the everlasting triumph will come. At that time the whole world will know the Church of Rome, because the gospel will resound from the poles to the equator, and the word will go from one side of the globe to the other, like a belt of love. Catholics, leaving behind the terribly savage struggle of which this one is but the prelude, weary of murdering one another and of following ruthless rulers, will turn from the unquenchable thirst to kill and the insurmountable violence, turning towards the triumphant cross, found again after they had been so blind. Above such a great roar of havoc and so much blood, they shall hear the voice that loves and forgives, and they shall see the light whiter than the lily, which comes down from the heavens, to train them for the heavens. Like a march of millions and millions of tribes, people will go towards Christ with their spirits, and will put their trust in earth's only being, in whom there is no craving for oppression or longing for revenge. It will be Rome that speaks, but not the more or less lastingly great Rome which rabble-rousers can win. It will be the Rome of Christ, the one that conquered the Caesars, conquering them without weapons, without battles, with one force only, love, with one weapon only, the cross, with one rhetoric only, prayer. It will be the Rome of the great pontiffs which, in a world darkened by barbarian invasions and dazed by their destructions, was able to preserve civilization and to spread it among the uncivilized. It will be the Rome that stood up to arrogant men, and through its holy, venerable old men was able to stand for the weak and sting with a spiritual punishment even those who appeared to be immune to any remorse. You cannot, you dissimilar nations, reach lasting agreements among yourselves. All of you have the same yearnings and the same needs, and like the pans of a scale, the weight of one nation's good share is detrimental to the other. You live in order to always have the better share, and you kill one another for it. It is an up and down situation which is getting worse and worse. Listen to the voice of someone who has no craving for power, but wants to rule in the name of his most holy King, only on your spirits. The day is coming when, disillusioned with men, you will turn to the one who is already more a spirit than a man, and who keeps just enough humanity to convince you of his presence. His mouth, which I inspire, will speak words like those I would tell you. I, Prince of Peace. He will teach you the infinitely precious pearl of mutual forgiveness. He will convince you that there is no weapon more beautiful than the plowshare, which wounds the clods to make them fertile, and the scythe, which cuts the grass to make it more beautiful. He will teach you that the holiest work is the one done to give the brothers and sisters a loaf of bread, a garment, a house, and that only by loving one another as brothers and sisters can you no longer experience the poison of hatred and the tortures of war. My children, set out on your march towards the Lord's light. Do not pass by, groping in the gloomy darkness. You, my beloved ones, set out at the head, overcoming every human fear, because I am with you, O those dearest to my heart. You, the others, Be won over by the example of my saints, all of you, my children. Set out on this new exodus towards the new earth, which I promise to you, and which will be your very earth, though changed by Christian love. Separate from those who are idolaters of Satan, of the world, and of the flesh. Without scorn, leave them. Scorn does no good. It uselessly wrecks. But separate from them to avoid being contaminated by them. Love them with the love of redeemers, putting between you and them your faith in Christ as a bulwark. You are not strong enough to be able to live in their midst without danger. Too many centuries of increasingly bad spiritual decay have weakened you. Imitate the early Christians. Learn to live in the world, but set apart from the world by virtue of your love for God. And never be inclined to consider as a superman the wretch who is not unlike the beasts, because, like them, his best part resides entirely in his instincts, the only thing that does not make him worse than a beast. The prophet says, "Cease therefore from the man whose breath is in his nostrils." I want all of you to interpret these words as follows. The animal without breath is but a loathsome corpse. Its only life is in its breath. Once its nostrils are shut to this breath, it ceases to exist and becomes a rotting carcass. There are many human beings no better than animals, since they have no life but the animal life, which lasts as long as breath remains in them. Their spirits are dead, those spirits made for the heavens. It is therefore right to say that there are human beings whose souls are the breath of their nostrils, and from whom it is best to remain spiritually far, so that the breath of Satan and beastliness which comes out of them may not undermine your humanity and make it like theirs. Pray for them, O you blessed ones. That is charity, and that is enough. Words do not enter those closed to the word, and do not consider as outstanding those who exhale and puff their arrogance and pride from their nostrils like mad wild beasts. The only outstanding people are those who have living spirits and are therefore God's children. Others are poor things whose sham nobility is doomed to a great fall, and whose memories do not live on except as the memories of scandal and horror. 51. After the short period of peace, the satanic period. November the 12th, 1943. Complete dictation. Quaderni 43, page 548 to 551. Isaiah chapter 4, verses 2 to 6. Jesus says, "When the time of my peaceful kingdom comes, and it shall come, because I promised it, and I do not fail to keep my promises, the good people on earth will all come to me. It shall be the period of which I have spoken to you, the period in which the Spirit will have reached that development by which you will all separate of your own free wills into two sides. Those living outside the Spirit will lie idle in their darkness, waiting to be troops for the Prince of Evil. Those living in the Spirit will come in the retinue of the Holy Son of God, the Scion of the Lord, loved and blessed by people in grace, who will understand then what is nowadays understood by few elect, and they will know what my glory is, and what theirs as children of God is. I will gather my saints, because a saint is whoever loves me and follows me obediently and faithfully. I will gather them from the four corners of the earth, and for the sake of their love I will forgive people's iniquities. The saints' goodness will douse the sternness of justice, and my love and that of the saints will, with its fire, cleanse the earth. The earth, reconciled with itself and with God, will be like a great altar, and on this altar the Master will teach mankind in the exact knowledge of truth, so that the good may not waver when Satan, raging at the sight of mankind worshiping Christ, goes wild for the last battle. Struggle of spirit against spirit. Satan will counter my spiritual kingdom and my teaching with his satanic warfare against spirits to lead as many astray as he can, the weakest, from his reserves, from his strongholds, containing those who remain faithful to the beast even after its defeat and that of its minister. He will draw the agents of seduction to ruin one last time God's work, the ruin of which he began at the foot of the tree of good and evil. The satanic period will be 3 times more ferocious than the period of the Antichrist. but it will be short, because for those living at that hour, the whole church triumphant will pray amidst the lights of heaven. The church suffering will pray amidst the cleansing flames of love. The church militant will pray with the last martyr's blood. Those will be saved who, while Satan's darkness and fierce heat, storms and thunderbolts devastate the world, know how to be shielded by the tabernacle from which all strength springs, because I am the strength of the living, and whoever feeds on me with faith and love becomes one with my strength. And these who will be saved shall be few, because after centuries upon centuries of my love for mankind, mankind has not learned to love. But no one will be able to accuse me if one is damned. And what more could I have done for you, O children of God, who preferred to wander far away from the Father's house, and at times sell your divine sonhood and daughterhood to God's enemy? Do not say that I, powerful, could have prevented evil from laying snares for you, and could have made you good by my authority. In that case, you would have been less deserving than a blade of grass, which the foot tramples without feeling it, because grass sprouts from the seed, thus obeying God's decree. It sprouts and grows by itself, and it does not get the slightest share of those attentions that you get from the Most High. The stalk gets sun and dew from God, and a clod of dirt. You have intelligence to conduct yourselves, grace to enlighten you, the law to control yourselves, and you have me as master, my blood for salvation. I have given you everything, and you have given me so little, less and less, in fact. With God's patience I have looked after you, and you have always revolted against me. The less guilty have always been sluggards. You have always been worried of doing too much for your God, who has done everything for you. That is why chastisements come upon you. They are still a call of love, to convince you that there is a God, and that the other gods whom you serve with that faithfulness which you withhold from me can give you only deceitful promises and inevitable evil. From chastisement to chastisement, increased as you increase idolatry and fornication. I come to the great chastisements, and this is one of them, so that it is no longer one row in my vineyard. It is the whole vineyard that is open and overrun, laid waste and devastated by the one you serve, and whom I allow to convince you of his death-dealing gifts. For this reason I tell you, come to God. Call on God with truthfulness of thoughts and of heart, and God will show himself on the blood-stained horizon, and Satan the torturer shall flee, leaving you free. But you do not call on God. You are content thinking about turning the common evil into your individual good, increasing your wealth, obtaining by trickery greater and greater powers, enjoying and enjoying. You do not care about those who suffer, the best among you. You care even less about God. In fact, you rise to defiance, daring to call on him, O blasphemers, to ratify your satanic actions and thoughts. You challenge him to show himself, because you tell one another, there is no God, we are God. Onto your cursed tongues, and your souls sold to Satan is already heaping up hell's embers, and I myself kindle them with my rage. I curse you from now on, snakes in human guise. Yes, you hold my saints' excommunications and my good people's loathing as sparrow feathers that do not hurt if they fall on your backs, because you own hearts of granite. Nevertheless, my curse shall go into torment you, because I am the one who opens the valleys, cleaves the mountains, divides the seas, shakes the earth with the will of my mina, and I can penetrate into the stone of your hearts and crumble it as though it were a fragile bubble of blown glass. Desecrators, liars, you wicked people, be cursed for all the evil you do, for all the souls I care for, which you throw into despairing of God's goodness, which you corrupt by your examples, and which you embezzle from me by ruining them in every way. But do not worry, as I will be just and compassionate for the weak, whom you with your force have swayed into evil. Likewise, I will be just and relentless with you. From this earth onwards, your power, your stolen wealth, distilled from the affliction of thousands of people, will go up in smoke between your hands, like the smoke of straw being burnt, because it is too mucky to keep. and no defense will be of any use for you who have exceeded all bounds. Let those who have ears to hear, hear. The blood-stained hand shall not be stretched out against the white purity of the saint who speaks in the name of the Holy of Holies, nor shall it be stretched out against the sanctuary choicer than the temple of Jerusalem, because its foundations, even before they were started on, were baptized in my hero's blood, and its stones have had for dew the purple cleansings of countless martyrs. In it there is the bed on which rests, waiting to rise up at his master's side, the flesh of my chosen rock. And I swear to all of you, that place is far holier than Solomon's temple was. It is already paradise. It is up to you to understand why. And the desecrators of this place will be struck by what befalls all those who defied the glory of the Lord. 52. Mirages on the way to the abyss. Shortly before the start of our extract, the text mentions the face of God, which humans have compelled to draw back away from the rising flood of crimes which, after laying waste the earth, hurl themselves against the heavens. November 16th, 1943. Extract. Quaderni 43, pages 560 to 561. Jesus says, people have forced God's face back. They refuse to acknowledge it. They do not believe it. They have replaced it with what is their undoing. They are in the hands of the occult powers rebellious to God's sign, and it is those that they serve, that they believe in, that they obey. Voices and more voices come out of deceitful sources, and not one of them tells the truth or a glimmer of truth. They are demons laughs that mock people, laughs that change into lying words to lead people more and more astray, and people listen to them. They want to know the future, to know what to do. The future is here, in my word. To avoid this present time, which is worse than both a nightmare and a punishment, you should have studied this word. You should have known how to read it and act according to its moral, historical, and supernatural teachings. To make the future less atrocious, you must once again study this word, which teaches good and truth. I repeat, leave the dead where they are. If they are blessed, they can tell you only what the word is already telling you, because the Lord's saints speak the same language as the Lord. If they are damned, they can tell you only the words of their Father, the Master and King of falsehood. Can you believe that the deceitful one could have one atom of mercy and grant you a light that would be a light of salvation? Of course not. On the contrary, pursuing his aim, he thinks up for you mirages among which the chasm of the abyss opens up. And you are falling headlong into the abyss, since you no longer have as your guide the morning light, God, your Holy Father, blind guided by the blind. Your corrupted spirits wander from error to error, from ruin to ruin. You crash into one another and hurt one another again and again with new wounds and new disasters. You hate one another for the evil you do to one another, and you pick handfuls of that hatred swelling in your hearts and throw it at God as you consider him to be responsible for your evil. And since hatred cannot reach heaven, it falls back on you as fire and flames, hunger, deaths, devastations, hopelessness, and darkness. There will be no truce until you have realized the hard way that violence is no use, that blood lies heavy on the stomach and does not feed, that hatred does not create, it destroys, and there will be no truce until your hearts turn back to God. I am the one who can give you peace, and not by using your murderous weapons, but by using my holy weapon, the cross, and by smashing your murderous weapons with my love. Do not hasten God's judgment by going too far in sinning. Do not act so that the respite between the time of the Antichrist and the time of Christ be too short. For if it is true that the last days will be shortened out of love for the elect, it is also true that you must have a peace pause to gain new strength for the last satanic battle. I will knock the stone back onto Lucifer's lair after the defeat of the beast and its slaves. But you do not, by cheering evil, give the devil the strength to shake that lock off. Do not, by devoting your spirits to flesh and to Satan, turn them into levers to open the infernal prison and let out the cursed one for the last looting before people's hearts have been rebaptized in the Lord's word. 53. More on the forerunners of Christ in his second coming. Our extract is the end of a dictation on Isaiah chapter 10, addressing all social classes at first. Jesus ends by addressing his forerunners in these end times, which will usher in his second coming at the end of the world. November 17th, 1943. Extract. Quaderni 43, pages 562 to 564. Jesus says, "You are turning into instruments of Satan, but I, more powerful than Satan, when I deem it is time for a new flood, take you and use you against one another, nations against nations, and on a small scale, relatives or friends against relatives and friends, to turn people into the punishment of people, punishing people's sins by means of their neighbors' sins. You oppress, and I allow others to oppress you. You plunder a country, and I allow others to plunder yours." Isaiah expresses it well. The rod and the staff of God's anger. That's what you are to one another when you go too far. Therefore, those favored by war and smiled upon by victory would do well not to think they had been God's darlings from everlasting, much less think they are so perfect that they would deserve from God every human success. No. If the victorious misuse their triumph, I will strike them and throw them down to the dust. I am the King, and the Lord, and no one is greater than me. I am the just one, and I do not consent to unfairness. My eyes see everyone in the same light. All of you come from the same stock. Your duties towards God, your Creator, are the same, and his concern for all of you is the same. The most civilized among you is to me like the least civilized, like the primitive, unaware of everything that is not his virgin forest. Scrutinizer that I am of the truthfulness of your thoughts and of the innocence of your sentiments, many times I lovingly look at the primitive, prostrating himself before and worshipping the figure which to him is God, and for which he becomes good, and I angrily turn my eyes away from the civilized, who refuse to acknowledge God known to him, with blasphemous words, denying thoughts and cursed deeds. Whenever the hour of chastisement is over, I say my enough, and I gather the stricken, scattered crowds, and I give them peace and bread. For I am a father, do not forget, and if you were not drunk with blood or intoxicated with the desire to drink it, I would always give you peace and bread. The more numerous God's upright people are amidst the crowds of lunatics, the faster and more abundantly and certainly do I give bread and peace. They, the upright, are hit in the general's chastisement, not for their own punishment, but for your redemption, because good, in order to thrive, always needs the saints' tears and the holocausts of redeemers. Oh, happy are those Christs whom you do not know, whom my heart gathers like gems into a case. Oh, happy are these angels who, amidst the chorus of the blasphemies and the indecencies in which you perish, know how to sing the glory be, and the holy, holy, holy to their God. They purify this earth from the stink of your sins. They live, burning like censers, and offer to God the most sacred fire, that of love. Through them I will perform again the miracle of forgiveness, the miracle of gathering the remnants of my people, and making them understand that only in God there is salvation. The others, those who do not want to be my people, and remember that I do not measure with your yardstick, the others will continue to follow the standards of their King. The world must not die without Christ's army being gathered under his command. Scattered, afflicted, disheartened, made similar to sand, wind-blown on the seashores, you will hear my command and come to me. For a time will come when I am king of these poor, crownless kingdoms and of these kingless subjects. I already see the spirits of that time taking up the call and coming, struggling against all the obstacles strewn by centuries of error, coming towards the light and the truth. I say spirits, because only those spiritually alive will be able to recognize the voice calling them. O you who are now already spiritually alive, you forerunners of Christ in his second coming, you opposites of the forerunners of the Antichrist, who do in his name the preliminary work for the desolation Prepare the way for me with your holocausts. The forerunners of the son of Satan have appearances of human dignity. The forerunners of the Son of God have the same crown as their king, and their throne and chair are the cross and sorrow. But as always, and especially as at the hour when sorrow had to defeat sin, it is always sorrow that saves. It is always sacrifice that redeems. And now the world to be redeemed does not need to be covered with ears of grain as much as with heroic souls, victims of charity.